In this video, we are going to be talking about Azure pipelines, build pipeline concepts. So we have been talking about the build pipelines a lot until our last video, but during our build process and YAML file creations, we discussed many new concepts which we never discussed in the course before. And some of them were like the build definitions, build artifacts, build steps or tasks, and build agents. So these are some of the most important things that we have discussed in our previous video while we were creating a new build, and also we were doing a kind of publishing, but we did not discuss about these concepts yet. So if you see in a nutshell, a build system in Azure primarily consists of three main things. One is the build definition, and the next one is the build steps, and the next one is the build agents. So if you see in a higher level in our last video, what we did is we did a code import using what is called as a pipeline, which is the new pipeline that we saw here with the modern way of YAML file, or you can also use the classical editor to choose the code from any one of the repositories of the source that you have. And then the build definition came into picture. So as I said, for any build system, the build definition is one of the most important thing, which is going to tell you like what kind of build is your system and what definition that you're going to be using for building your system. Basically, you're going to say like this is an ASP.NET app. You need to do something like downloading the code from the repository, and then you need to restore the NuGet file, and then you need to compile the Visual Studio code and all those stuff. So everything is actually sitting in the build definition. So the build definition is one place where it's going to say you, okay, these are things that I need to be doing for my code execution. And that's exactly what you said in this particular pipeline once we chose this ASP.NET Core template from there. So once we chose that, everything was happening for us magically behind the scene without us doing anything. We didn't even specify that we need to do NuGet package restorations and stuff, and everything was happening magically for us. And these were something that we were doing in our previous versions of Visual Studio Team System. And in this version, you can see that it is completely simplified and it's completely automated for us to focus on the major things rather all these nitty-gritty details that we were doing all these days. And the next one is the build step. So the build step is something that we saw in our previous video, like what is this particular trigger and what is this particular pool and where we are going to be getting this particular build, and then what are we going to be doing with this particular code. And we also created two different build steps like targeting of the copy file and also the publishing the artifacts. So we saw all these things in the build steps. So the build steps is the next most core important things for any build, where you're going to be specifying the steps that you're going to be doing for a particular build. It can be like copy file, it can be publish artifact, it can be deploying to Kubernetes, or it can be getting a file from a third-party service, or it can be even getting a file from an SQL, or storing a database, or taking a backup of a database, and things of that nature. So you can be doing a lot of different tasks or steps in this build step process. And the final most important part of the build system is the build agent. So we saw that in our previous video, we were using what is called as a Ubuntu latest VM from a pool. So you were asking, what is this pool? So basically this is an agent pool of Azure DevOps service where it has many different hosted agents from Microsoft. So you can see that Microsoft has got different kinds of agents, something like hosted Mac OS. So the hosted is the hosted Windows 10 operating system, and the hosted Mac OS is the Mac operating system, which is the pretty default. And then if you see, there is a high Sierra, so based on the versions, and then Ubuntu, the latest version, hosted VS 2017. So with Windows comes VS 2017 as well. And they also introduced this new hosted Windows 2019 with VS 2019. This is a new one which is released like a couple of weeks before, and we also have this option. And then comes the hosted Windows containers. So you can also build this particular code using this hosted Windows container. So these are the different kinds of build agents which is available, and you can consume that. For the public project, it is kind of unlimited minutes, so you can use them. But you can also create a self-hosted agents. So the self-hosted agents are like a great way to understand the concept behind how the agent actually build our code and publishes the same in our local machines. and this agent can be again running in Windows, Mac operating system, or Linux to do so. And once again, the agents and the configuring of the local agents is something we already discussed in 2015 edition of Team Foundation Server, which is pretty much exactly the same thing. Nothing has been changed, but just that the way the process has been created this time with Azure DevOps service is little more unified, I guess, and it is even more streamlined, and it is even more faster in terms of the connectivity with the Azure DevOps services. So these are the different concepts one should ever know while working with the build system. Starting our next video, we are going to be creating our own self-hosted agent, and we'll see how we can make use of the self-hosted agent for performing an operation. We'll also discuss about how the hosted agent we can change with the Windows or Mac operating system to run this particular code that we have already created.